Sup, it's Chad, and we're back with a new Dexa video cut edition. For context, I cut for 9 weeks and dropped 24 pounds, from 182 pounds to a morning lowest 158 pounds body weight. Here is the comparison between my last Dexa imaging and the most recent one. I look leaner on the edges and drop some fat everywhere, but from the front profile, most obviously in the hips area and love handles. For reference, this is what my face looked like at the time of the last DEXA scan, around 192 pounds. And this is what my face looked like a few days ago. You can also see my face on the screen. So just an idea of how much leaner I am. Let's get into the scan. Okay, so here are the scan results on the right side of the screen. Since the last scan, I dropped 29 pounds body weight, including 10 pounds of lean mass and 19 pounds of fat mass, according to the DEXA. It now says I'm 12% body fat. I took a shitty video of myself running some poses this morning at 156.4 pounds body weight. So this is your last chance to skip this section if you don't want to see me in my underwear, as I'm going to be playing my posing as I go over the scan updates. I warned you. So this value on the DEXA gets me in top 20th percentile for body fat compared to a population of normies. Regional assessment has me holding on to more fat in the legs and hips, which is exactly what you'd expect at this body fat level. So visceral fat actually measured at my highest ever level, which is a bit weird, but overall I'm not really worried about just 4 ounces of visceral fat. For reference, the best way to get rid of visceral fat is fasting and high-intensity fasted cardio, or just high-intensity cardio, but fasted probably works a little bit better because you're getting double duty in there. My bone density is exactly the same, but something actually interesting in the balance report. So my left arm is slightly smaller than my right, which it's always been that way. But actually my left leg has it as a little bit bigger than my right leg, which is flipped because in the past my right leg has been bigger. I actually injured my right hamstring in between the last scan and this one, so maybe the rehab of that actually had a measurable effect and I lost some relative size on the right leg, which is interesting. So back on the topic of total body fat percentage, personally based on the video on the left side of the screen here and using my laser eyes, I think that I'm probably closer to 14% than 12%. Generally, anecdotally, most of these types of body fat tests like the hydrostatic weighing and stuff like that will tell you that you're leaner than you actually are, and the DEXA at least claims to test a little bit higher than the other methods, which I believe, but it also says that it is within a 0.5% margin of error. I still believe, based on my laser eyes and seeing other people's results and their DEXA videos and stuff like that, that it tends to underestimate body fat. So I decided to look into it a little bit more. Okay, so let's talk evidence of DEXA underestimation of body fat. So in this top figure 3, it compared the thigh muscle of participants measured with the MRI versus the DEXA, and on average the DEXA actually overestimated the muscle mass by 1 kilogram. In the next figure, this is thigh muscle mass in old people as a proportion of younger people, so it's kind of weirdly normalized, but you still see the trend in that the DEXA on average read that they had higher muscle mass than the MRI for thigh muscle. This study showed that while DEXA lean mass was pretty good for the limbs, the trunk lean mass is about 1/3 skeletal muscle, and the rest is other sorts of visceral lean tissue. So when looking at the DEXA, just know you can't fully conflate lean mass with skeletal muscle mass. So one fun thing that I found while researching about the DEXA and how accurate it was this paper from the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and it argues that bioelectrical impedance is good enough to use in clinical and sport-specific contexts. Well, guess what? I got the in-body bioelectrical impedance done about 7 weeks into the cut, and it told me that I was 3.4% body fat. So do not trust the bioelectrical impedance. It's trash. The little bathroom scales that claim to tell you what your body fat is, it's trash. Don't use it. It's trash. It's trash. Okay, let's talk protocol. So for my calories, I did 2,400 calories starting from the beginning all the way down until the last week, where I changed it to 2,100 calories. There was a couple of refeeds/cheats thrown in there, kind of when they just happened. It was probably around 2,800 to 3,200 calories each time, and I was getting 150 grams of protein per day on average. Compounds. So first, clenbuterol. Started with 20 micrograms daily up to 50 micrograms daily by the end. Clenbuterol is a beta-2 adrenergic receptor agonist, which supports fat loss and is mildly anabolic in dosage, is above 40 micrograms, more so in women. I wouldn't really use this on its own in the future, and would probably prefer mirabegron instead, but with the other two compounds I was stacking with, it's highly synergistic. SLU-PP332, 175 micrograms daily up to 400 micrograms daily in the morning plus afternoon. So normally I would do 175-ish, 150, 200, something like that in the morning. And occasionally I would double dose it, and so then I would do morning and afternoon. SLU-PP332 is an estrogen-related receptor alpha, beta, and gamma receptor agonist, but has much higher affinity for the alpha. Not to be confused with the estrogen receptor beta and alpha, which it does not interact with based on the clinical literature. This is a mitochondrial support aid, and it increases exercise endurance, improves insulin sensitivity, is an exercise mimetic, increases fatty acid oxidation, and partially blocks fat absorption. Credit to Vigorous Steve for his extensive deep dive on this promising new compound. If someone were using this, I'd tell them to slowly titrate up the dose and spread the administrations throughout the day, because it has an unknown half-life. And if you jump on a high dose, you will have distressing bathroom experiences because of the blockage of fat absorption. Retatrutide, 0.25 milligrams 3 times per week, 0.75 milligrams weekly is what I started with, and I increased it to about 0.6 milligrams 3 times per week, 1.8 milligrams weekly by the end. Retatrutide is a combination glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist, gastric inhibitory polypeptide receptor agonist, and glucagon receptor agonist. This is the best of the new anorectic drugs because the combination of the three mechanisms of action, and by far of all the different things I've tried, I was most impressed with this over anything else. This shit works like literal magic. It'll make you less hungry the day after your first injection. Seriously. One thing to note or be aware of is that it has a very long half-life of probably at least 10 days. So if you run this all the way until the end of the cut and then you start the bulk immediately, the same GIP mechanism that allows for movement of fatty acids from your fat cells more efficiently, it works both ways. And so if you eat a bunch of fat in a surplus with the GIP activation, you're pretty much instructing your body to input that surplus of energy into your fat cells. So that's just one thing to be aware of. If you're going straight from a cut into a bulk, you have to allow for clearance of the retatrutide because it has a very long clearance time. All things considered, these three compounds worked together amazingly well, and I believe you do gain a synergistic effect from stacking them over picking just one. The one thing I would change is I'd probably run mirabegron over clen because mirabegron activates the beta 3 instead of the beta 2. Which is probably safer and increases your heart rate a little bit less. And dietary supplements. So each of these I just took them when I remembered to or when I felt like it, and so it was probably about 4 to 5 times a week, and it was one capsule each for most of them. Fish oil, Nordic Naturals, glutathione for digestion, magnesium, I added this in late. Taurine for the clen cramps, I added this in late, but highly recommend doing it from the beginning. Gorilla Mind Dream. So I kind of just used a quarter dose occasionally when I needed it to get to sleep. I actually dislike the fact that this literally makes you dream because my dreams are always stressful. And so if I took even a quarter dose or a half dose, normally a quarter dose of this, it just guarantees that I'm going to have a stressful dream when I use it. But it does help you get to sleep. So, it's a give and take. Finally, HDLT terkesterone. I do believe in this stuff. I do believe it's anabolic. It's an estrogen receptor beta agonist. I use 2 capsules pre-workout in lieu of using pre-workout stims. It improves my mental drive and aggression in the gym. This thing does make me personally tweak a little bit. It makes me angry and aggressive, but is what it is. And creatine 5 milligrams on workout days. Alright, so that's all I had for today. Thank you for anyone who's actually been following along. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video.